The night was quiet on the distant colony planet. The stars above looked cold, and the ground was covered with dark stone and broken trees. Daniel, a human explorer, sat beside his rover, fixing a broken power cable. He had been traveling alone for weeks, mapping unknown areas for future settlers. His hands moved slowly, his mind tired but his heart steady. He thought tonight would be just another lonely night. Then it happened. A sound broke the silence. It was faint at first, like the wind. But then it grew clearer. It was not the wind. It was a cry, a child's cry, soft but full of fear. Daniel froze, his tools falling from his hands. On this world, humans had no children, only scientists and workers. So where could this voice come from? He looked around, his lamp flashing across the black forest. The sound came again. It was closer this time. The cry of someone small, someone in pain. Daniel's heart raced. Every part of him said this was dangerous. No one was supposed to be here. If there was a voice, it could mean a trap. But another part of him, the human part that could not ignore a crying child, pushed him to move. He picked up his flashlight and stepped away from the rover. The forest seemed alive, every shadow moving as if watching him. The cry came again. Please, please come with me. Daniel stopped, his breath caught in his chest. The words were clear in his own language, but they sounded broken, as if spoken by someone who had learned them in fear. The voice was trembling. Begging, Daniel whispered, "Who's there?" But only silence answered. He walked further. The ground soft under his boots. The smell of strange plants filled the air, sharp and sour. His lamp caught something, small footprints in the dust, too small to be human. Too delicate, he followed them deeper into the forest. The trees bent inward like claws, and every step felt heavier than the last. The cry came again, weaker this time, as if the child was running out of strength. Please, come with me. Daniel's hand shook as he raised his flashlight. And then he saw her, a small figure crouched near a fallen tree. She was no human child. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes too large, glowing softly in the dark. She wore torn cloth that looked ancient. As if from another world, her thin arms were shaking. Her face wet with tears. For a moment, Daniel could not move. He had seen aliens before, but never a child, never like this. The girl looked fragile, broken, and yet her eyes carried something heavy, something that spoke of sorrow beyond her years. When she saw him, she gasped, her lips trembled, and she repeated the same words, "Please, come with me." Her voice cracked like glass. Daniel stepped closer, his heart pounding. "Who are you? What happened to you?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "No time." "Please hurry." Her hands reached out, thin and trembling. Daniel hesitated. If he touched her, if he followed her, there would be no turning back. But her eyes begged him, pulling him deeper than fear ever could. Behind them, the forest made a sound. A low growl, not of any animal Daniel knew. The girl flinched, clutching her chest. "They are coming," she whispered. Daniel felt his skin crawl. He looked behind, but the darkness only stared back. Something was out there, watching, waiting. He knew he should run back to the safety of his rover. But he could not leave her, not like this. Not when her small voice still trembled in the air. Slowly, carefully, he reached out his hand. The girl's fingers touched his. Cold and fragile, a spark passed between them, not of power but of fate. She pulled him gently. Pointing toward the deeper forest, Daniel's breath was heavy. His steps unsure, but he followed. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back. But something stronger kept him moving forward. The unknown, the fear, and the unspoken promise in her eyes. They walked together, one human and one alien child. The forest grew darker, and the growls behind them grew louder. Daniel did not know where she was leading him. He only knew one thing. This was no accident. He was meant to find her, and what waited ahead would change everything. The forest swallowed them in silence. Daniel's boots pressed into soft earth, while the alien girl, Lyra, pulled him forward with surprising strength. Her hand was small in his, cold but determined. Every step felt like a step away from safety, yet he could not let go. Behind them, the growls rose and then faded, as if unseen hunters circled in the dark. Daniel's heart pounded, his senses sharp, his fear alive. "Where are you taking me?" he whispered, his voice low. Lyra did not answer. Her breath was fast, her shoulders trembling, but her pace never slowed. The forest grew stranger as they moved deeper. Trees twisted like broken bones, their branches glowing faintly with veins of light. The air smelled of iron and ash. Daniel felt as if the world itself was watching him, judging his every move. Finally, Lyra stopped. Before them stood a stone wall half buried in earth and vines. It was ancient, massive, and carved with symbols that glowed a pale blue in the night. The markings seemed alive, shifting faintly under his eyes. Daniel stared, his mind racing. He had studied alien ruins before, but nothing like this. This was not on any map, not in any record. This was hidden, forgotten, or perhaps erased. Lyra placed her trembling hand against the wall. The symbols pulsed brighter, responding to her touch. The stone groaned as if waking from a long sleep. Slowly, a narrow passage opened, stone sliding aside with a grinding cry. Daniel stepped back in shock. How did you do that? Lyra's glowing eyes flicked toward him. Her voice was soft but heavy. Because this place remembers me. The words chilled him more than the night air. What did she mean? Why would a ruin respond to her? Questions swirled in his mind, but there was no time. The growl echoed again from the forest, closer now. Lyra tugged his hand. Inside. Before they come, Daniel followed. Though fear gnawed at his bones, the passage was narrow and cold. The walls glowing faintly. The air smelled of dust, and each step echoed as if they were walking through the ribs of a dead giant. Inside, the tunnel opened into a chamber. Vast and strange pillars of stone stretched high. Covered with glowing marks, in the center lay a pool of still water. Shining like glass, the silence was heavy, broken only by their breathing. Daniel turned in slow circles, his light bouncing off the carvings. It was beautiful, but it felt wrong, like standing in a place where time itself had stopped. He finally spoke, voice shaking. Who are you, Lyra? What is this place? She stood near the pool, her reflection trembling in the water. I cannot tell you everything, she whispered. Not yet. But you must trust me. Her voice cracked, and Daniel saw her small hands clenched tight. This is the only safe place left, but they will still find us. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. Who are they? Who's chasing you? Lyra's eyes filled with tears, her voice barely above a whisper. The ones who took my family. The ones who burned my home. Soldiers of the Authority. Daniel froze. The Galactic Authority, he had heard the name many times. They were not soldiers of peace, but rulers through fear. If they wanted this girl, it meant she was more than she appeared. His chest tightened. Why you? Why would they hunt a child? Lyra's gaze dropped to the glowing water. I am not just a child, she said softly. I am the last of something they fear. Before Daniel could ask more, a sharp sound echoed through the tunnels, metal striking stone, distant but growing nearer. Lyra's head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. They are here, she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel pulled her close, his soldier instincts kicking in. How many tunnels lead in here? Only one, she said, but they will not stop. They never stop. The air grew colder, heavy with dread. Footsteps now, armored and steady, approaching fast. Daniel scanned the chamber for anything that could be used as a weapon. He picked up a broken shard of stone, sharp enough to cut. Not much, but it was something. He turned back to Lyra, who stood trembling by the pool, her hands pressed together as if praying. Light gathered at her fingertips, faint but growing. What are you doing? Daniel asked, her glowing eyes lifted to his. I will show you why they fear me. The chamber shook as a blast tore through the passage. Shadows filled the air and armored soldiers stepped inside, weapons raised. Their masks hid their faces, but Daniel knew what they were. Authority enforcers. Cold and merciless, Lyra's voice trembled but carried strength. If they take me, you will die too. They never leave witnesses. Daniel's grip tightened on the stone shard. His heart thundered in this ancient place. Hunted by forces far greater than himself, he realized a truth. He had stumbled into something far beyond exploration, something that could change everything. The chamber shook with every step of the armored soldiers. Their boots struck the stone floor like drums of war. The echo rolling through the ruins, Daniel stood frozen, clutching the broken shard in his hand. It felt useless against the rifles aimed at him. The soldiers' visors glowed red, scanning the room, searching, calculating. Behind him, Lyra's eyes burned brighter, her small body trembling but unyielding. Stay behind me, she repeated, her voice both fragile and commanding. Daniel obeyed, his heart hammering in his chest. He had survived battles before, but this was different. This was not war between armies, this was execution. The authority did not send soldiers to capture. They sent them to erase. The leader of the soldiers stepped forward, his armor marked with silver stripes. His voice was flat and cold through the helmet. "Surrender the child, human. And your death will be quick." Daniel's throat went dry. He wanted to argue, to demand answers. But Lyra moved before he could speak. She raised her hands slowly. The air around her shimmered. The glowing symbols on the walls responded, pulsing like a heartbeat. The pool of water rippled, though no wind touched it. The soldiers hesitated for the first time. Lyra's voice rang out, trembling but strong. "You burned my people. You thought you ended us. But the blood of my family lives still." Her words struck Daniel like a storm. What did she mean? Her people? Burned? Ended? Questions filled his mind. But there was no time. One soldier fired. A bolt of light screaming across the chamber. Daniel flinched, but Lyra did not. Her glowing eyes flared brighter. The bolt bent in midair and splashed harmlessly into the pool. The soldiers staggered back in disbelief. Daniel's breath caught. This child was not helpless. She was something else, something powerful. The soldiers shouted and fired together. Bolts rained through the chamber, burning into stone. Lyra's hands spread wide. The symbols on the pillars glowed like fire. A shield of pure light rose around them, cracking and sparking but holding. Daniel shielded his eyes, the brilliance nearly blinding. When the blasts stopped, silence filled the chamber once again. The leader growled through his helmet. "She is the last." "Finish it," the soldiers charged. Rifles raised, but before they could reach, the ground itself shifted, the floor cracked, and vines of glowing stone burst upward, wrapping around the soldiers' legs. They screamed as the vines pulled them down. Armor sparked, weapons fell. The chamber swallowed them like a living beast. In moments, the soldiers were gone, buried under the stone. Daniel stood in stunned silence, his chest heaving. His mind racing, he turned to Lyra, who collapsed to her knees. Breathing hard, her glow faded, her small body trembling with exhaustion. He knelt beside her, his voice gentle. What are you?" She looked up, her eyes wet with tears but still glowing faintly. "I am Lyra," she whispered. "Daughter of the Alaran, the last of my kind." Daniel frowned, shaking his head. "I've never heard of the Alaran, no records." "No stories." Lyra gave a bitter smile. "That is because the authority erased us, they feared us, they called us a danger. They hunted us until none were left." Her words weighed heavy. Daniel felt the air grow colder. Why? Why would they fear children? Lyra's hands touched the glowing floor. The symbols pulsed faintly under her skin. Because we carried the gift, the power to shape life, to heal what was broken, to make worlds bloom. We were not soldiers, we were builders. But the authority saw our gift as rebellion. They cannot control what they cannot own. Daniel's heart twisted. He saw not just a child, but a survivor of a destroyed world. A child who carried memories of fire, screams, and loss. He wanted to comfort her, but he also felt the weight of truth. If she was telling the truth, then she was not only rare, she was dangerous. Dangerous to the authority, and dangerous to anyone who protected her. Why me? Daniel asked quietly. Why did you call to me? Lyra's eyes softened, though her tears still fell. Because you listened. Others passed, soldiers, traders, hunters. They heard my cry but turned away. You did not. That is why the ruins opened to you. That is why you are here. You are not just a human. You are a choice. Her words left Daniel speechless. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just an explorer, a wanderer. But now this child spoke as if fate had guided him. As if he had been chosen. The chamber shook again. Faint but certain, more soldiers were coming. The authority would not stop. Lyra gripped his hand tightly. Daniel, they will keep hunting. If they catch me, they will erase me. If they erase me, my people's gift will be gone forever. Her small voice cracked. Will you protect me, or will you leave me like the others did? Daniel looked into her eyes. In them he saw sorrow, fear, but also fire. The fire of a people who had been silenced, and the fire of a child who refused to give up. He swallowed hard, his decision burning inside him. He squeezed her hand firmly. I will not leave you. Lyra? The sound of boots echoed through the tunnels. Louder, sharper, closer. Daniel tightened his grip on Lyra's hand. His jaw set, his pulse racing. The chamber lights pulsed faintly. As if warning them of what was coming, Lyra's glow dimmed. Her body weak from using too much power. But her eyes were still sharp, still filled with fear. "They are here," she whispered, "and this time—" "There are more." Daniel pulled her up, steadying her small frame. "We have to move now," he said firmly. He looked around, desperate for a way out. The chamber seemed to close in, the walls heavy with ancient silence. Only one path remained, the tunnel leading upward. Carved with half-broken steps without another word, Daniel lifted Lyra into his arms and started running. The tunnel walls shook, dust falling like rain behind them. Voices shouted in the harsh tone of authority soldiers. The scrape of metal, the click of weapons charging. Daniel's lungs burned, but he did not stop. His boots pounded against stone, echoing like drums of war. Lyra clung to his chest, her breath ragged, her eyes flicking to the ceiling. "They will collapse the tunnels," she warned. Daniel kept running, his mind cold and sharp. "Then we need to be ahead of the collapse." A blast roared behind them. The shockwave slammed into his back, nearly throwing him off his feet. Stones rained down, shards cutting across his arm. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward. Through the falling dust, the tunnel split into two paths. Left or right, no time to think. Daniel chose right, his instincts guiding him. Lyra's glow flickered weakly, but she pressed her hand against the wall. The runes lit up faintly, showing cracks in the rock ahead. "This way will not last long," she whispered. "But it is faster." They burst through the narrow tunnel into another chamber. This one smaller, filled with broken statues of beings Daniel could not recognize. Their stone faces were worn, but their eyes seemed alive, watching him. Daniel's chest tightened with unease, but before he could question it, a beam of red light sliced across the room. Soldiers had already cut them off. Blaster rifles hummed, aimed straight at his chest. Daniel ducked behind a fallen statue, pulling Lyra close. Bolts of energy slammed into stone. Exploding in showers of sparks, he gritted his teeth, gripping the useless shard still in his hand. "We can't fight them," he muttered. "Not like this." Lyra looked at him, her face pale, her body trembling. "I can help, but it will hurt me." Daniel shook his head sharply. "No, you've already done too much," her eyes filled with tears. "If we do nothing, we both die." Before he could answer, the statue beside them shattered. The soldiers advanced, their rifles glowing hot. Daniel knew they were out of time. He stood holding Lyra tight and ran toward the far wall. Blasts chased him, heat searing past his face. At the last second, Lyra lifted her hand. Her glow burst out, not strong, but enough. The wall cracked open, creating a narrow passage. Daniel slipped through just as the soldiers fired again. The blast collapsed the stone behind them, sealing the path. The new passage sloped upward. Narrow and jagged, Daniel's shoulders scraped against stone, his arms cut by sharp edges, but he didn't slow. He could hear the soldiers digging, breaking through the collapse. "They won't stop," he muttered. Lyra nodded weakly against his chest. "They never stop. They fear what I carry more than death itself." The tunnel opened suddenly, spilling them out into the night air. Daniel stumbled, nearly falling as he adjusted to the open sky. The stars shone cold above them, but relief was short-lived. Across the clearing, more soldiers waited, their black armor glinting under the moonlight. Rifles raised, Daniel cursed under his breath. Trapped, outnumbered, no weapons, no plan. Then he saw it, his rover, or what was left of it. The machine was half buried under broken trees, scorched from earlier blasts. It could not drive, but maybe, just maybe, there was something inside he could use. He sprinted toward it, dragging Lyra with him. Shots rained down, sparks exploding in the dirt around his feet. The rover loomed closer. Daniel kicked open the side hatch and pulled Lyra inside. The soldiers closed in, their visors glowing like red eyes in the night. Inside the rover, smoke stung his lungs. The systems were dead, the power core shattered. But his eyes landed on a small case, a flare gun. Not much, but better than nothing. He grabbed it, loading the single glowing round. Lyra clutched his arm, her voice weak but urgent. "They will not stop if they catch me. They will take me far away, and you will never see me again." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at the flare gun, then at the circle of soldiers closing around the rover. This was no battle he could win, but maybe he could buy time. He fired the flare into the air, the red light exploding across the sky. The soldiers hesitated, shields rising to block the glare. Daniel grabbed Lyra and leapt out the other side of the rover. "Run!" he shouted, his voice raw. Together, they sprinted into the wasteland. The ground was endless rock and dust. Sharp winds cutting their faces. Behind them, the soldiers gave chase, armored boots striking like thunder. Lyra stumbled, her legs too weak. Daniel lifted her again. Carrying her against his chest, her small voice trembled. I cannot keep going much longer. Daniel's throat tightened, his breath harsh. Then I'll carry you the whole way, no matter how far. The wasteland stretched endless under the stars. Daniel's legs burned as he carried Lyra through the sharp wind. Every breath scraped his lungs, every step felt heavier. But he did not stop. Behind them, the echo of soldiers' boots carried across the stone, and above them, the shadow of the warship spread like a giant wing. Its light swept the ground, hunting, searching. Every time the beams came near, Daniel crouched low, shielding Lyra with his body. Her small hands clung to his jacket, her breath shallow and weak. She whispered between gasps, "They will not stop." Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes hard. Then we'll keep running until they can't find us, but the truth gnawed inside him. They could not run forever. The warship was too fast, the soldiers too many. His body was reaching its limit, and Lyra, she was fading. Her glow dimmed more with each passing minute. Her head rested heavy against his chest, her words slipping into silence. At last, Daniel stumbled to his knees. He laid her gently on the cold stone ground. His chest rose and fell in ragged gasps. The ship's shadow circled overhead, its engines humming like the roar of a beast. Daniel pressed his hands against the dirt, cursing under his breath. This is impossible. I can't fight an army. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly in the dark. Her voice was barely a whisper. Daniel, you must know why they hunt me. Daniel leaned closer, listening. Her trembling hand reached for his, her small fingers icy cold. They fear the gift of the Alaran. He frowned, shaking his head. You already told me about it. Healing, shaping life. But why fear that? Lyra's lips trembled, her words slow, heavy with pain. Because it is more than healing with it. We could grow forests and deserts, turn stone into bread. Breathe life where there was none. No one would need the authority. No one would obey them. Daniel's breath caught, he understood now. Her people had been wiped out not because they were dangerous, but because they were free. The authority thrived on control, and nothing was more dangerous to them than freedom. He clenched his fists, fury burning in his chest. They destroyed your people for this? For fear? Lyra nodded weakly. They called it forbidden. Forbidden power, but it was never meant to harm, only to give, yet they feared it so much. They killed us all. Her eyes filled with tears, shimmering in the faint glow of her power. I am the last, Daniel. If they erase me, the gift will die with me, and no one will ever remember we were here. Her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel felt a weight settle on his shoulders, heavier than the warship above them. This was no longer about survival, it was about legacy, about truth, about the survival of an entire people. Before he could answer, the ground shook. A beam of light from the warship struck nearby. Blasting the stone into fire, the shockwave hurled Daniel and Lyra back. Dust filling the air. From the smoke, soldiers emerged in black armor. Rifles raised, Daniel staggered to his feet. Pulling Lyra behind him, his body was broken, exhausted, but his spirit refused to bend. He raised the shard of stone still in his hand, pitiful against their rifles. Stay behind me, he growled. Though he knew the words were useless, the soldiers stepped closer, their weapons humming with deadly light. The leader's voice echoed through a speaker, cold and final. End it now. Erase her. Daniel's heart sank. This was the end. He had no weapon, no chance, no hope, but then Lyra stood, her small frame shaking, her knees weak, but her eyes burning brighter than ever. She stepped forward past Daniel, her hands trembling but lifted. No, she whispered. The soldiers fired, but the bolts froze in the air, hanging like stars. Lyra's glow flared. Spilling across the wasteland, the earth cracked, glowing veins spreading out from her feet. The dead ground pulsed as if alive. From the cracks, green shoots burst forth, glowing plants climbing toward the sky. The wasteland bloomed in seconds, life spreading where there had only been dust. Daniel's eyes widened in awe. He could feel the heat, the energy, the impossible life filling the air. Lyra's voice rang out stronger now. This is the power you fear, not death, not war, but life itself, the soldiers faltered. Their steps uncertain, the vines surged, wrapping around their legs, pulling weapons from their hands. The ground beneath them split, swallowing some whole, The warship above roared, its lights flickering as if the very earth resisted it. Lyra's glow grew too bright to look at. Her hair floated around her face, her small body trembling under the weight of the gift. Daniel reached for her, his voice desperate. "Lyra, stop. You'll burn yourself out." She turned her glowing eyes to him, her face soft with sorrow. "I told you, Daniel, it will hurt me, but I cannot let them take me." "Not alive," her voice cracked, her knees buckling. Daniel caught her as she collapsed. Her glow flickered, dimming, her face pale. The blooming plants around them slowed, the ground settling into silence once more. The soldiers who remained alive pulled back in fear. Even they seemed shaken by what they had witnessed. Daniel held her tight, his voice rough with emotion. "You can't do this alone, Lyra. I won't let you." Her weak hand pressed against his chest. "You already chose, Daniel. You stood with me. That is enough." The warship's shadow swallowed the wasteland. Its engines roared like thunder, shaking the ground beneath Daniel's knees. He held Lyra close, her small body limp, her glow fading to a faint shimmer. The vines and flowers she had created were already wilting. Curling back into dust, her forbidden power had bought them a moment. But at a terrible cost from the dust and smoke. Soldiers advanced again, their armor dented, their rifles sparking, but their formation steady. The leader's voice echoed cold from his helmet. "She cannot escape. Surrender her, human, and your death will be swift." Daniel stood, lifting Lyra in his arms. His chest rose and fell with fury, his jaw tight. "You'll have to go through me first," he growled. The soldiers raised their weapons. Daniel gripped the broken shard in one hand, a useless blade against their rifles, but his eyes burned with defiance, even cornered, even outnumbered. He would not bow. Lyra stirred weakly in his arms. Her trembling fingers touched his chest. "Daniel, don't," she whispered. Her eyes shimmered with sorrow, not fear. "You can't win against them. They will kill you for nothing." Daniel looked down at her, his voice rough. "Then I die standing, not running." Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head slowly. "No, that is not what I want. I didn't bring you here to die. I brought you here so you would see, so someone would remember we lived." Her words cut him deeper than any blade. Daniel's throat tightened, his grip shaking. "You think I can just watch them take you?" he asked, his voice breaking. Lyra gave a weak, bitter smile. "That is the choice, Daniel. You live and remember. Or you fight and are forgotten with me." The soldiers stepped closer, weapons humming with deadly light. Daniel's chest burned with rage and helplessness. Every instinct screamed to protect her, but her fragile voice pulled at his heart. What if this really was the end? What if all he could do was carry her story, not her life? The leader raised his hand, signaling to fire. Lyra's small body trembled, her glow flickering like a candle in the wind. She looked into Daniel's eyes, her voice soft. "Please, Daniel, don't let me die for nothing. Promise me. Promise you'll tell them." Daniel's eyes blurred with tears. He pressed his forehead to hers, whispering through clenched teeth. "I promise, but I won't let them take you alive." Before the soldiers could fire, Lyra lifted her hand weakly. A last surge of light burst from her palm. It was not strong, not enough to stop them, but enough to blind them for a heartbeat. Daniel seized the moment, running toward the rocks. Blasts of energy followed, striking the ground. Exploding dust into the air, he leapt behind a ridge, shielding Lyra as stones rained down. Her glow flickered, her breathing shallow. "Daniel," she whispered, I can't hold it anymore." He shook his head fiercely. "No, don't say that. You're stronger than you think. You've carried this far alone. You're not alone now." But she smiled weakly, tears sliding down her pale cheeks. "That's why it hurts more, because now—" "I don't want to go," the words shattered him. He gritted his teeth, fighting the burn in his chest.
He had seen death before.
Soldiers, friends, strangers, but never like this. Never a child who deserved life but carried only sorrow. The ground shook again as the warship lowered further. Its massive cannons glowed, ready to fire. The leader's voice thundered through the dust. "There is no escape, human. Choose, step aside, or burn with her." Daniel held Lyra tighter, his heart screaming. Her small hand pressed against his chest one last time. "You already chose," she whispered. "You already chose?" she whispered. "You chose me. And that is enough." Her eyes closed. Her glow dimmed almost to nothing. Daniel's breath caught, his whole body trembling with rage and grief. He looked at the soldiers, at the warship looming like a god of death. And he knew this was the breaking point. He could not give her up. He could not watch her be erased. He stood tall, his voice raw and defiant. You want her? Then you'll have to erase me too. The soldiers aimed their rifles, the warship's cannons glowing hotter. The wasteland trembled, silence heavy before the storm, and in Daniel's arms Lyra stirred faintly, her lips moving with one final whisper. The warship hung over the wasteland like a giant shadow. Its cannons glowed brighter, ready to erase everything below. The soldiers stood in a half-circle, rifles aimed, waiting for the command. Daniel held Lyra close, his arms trembling. His eyes burning with defiance. He knew he could not win, but he also knew he could not let her go. Lyra's faint glow flickered against his chest. Her voice was a whisper, fragile as wind. Daniel, this is the end, but endings can also be beginnings. Her small hand pressed weakly to his heart. You promised me. Remember, Daniel's throat tightened, his chest heavy with pain. I promised, he whispered back. I will never forget, Lyra, not you, not your people. Even if I have to carry your story alone. The leader of the soldiers raised his hand. Erase them both, he commanded coldly. The soldiers aimed, rifles humming with deadly light. The warship's cannons whined. Charging for a final blast, Daniel closed his eyes, bracing for fire, but Lyra's body went still in his arms. Then her glow burst, not weak, not fading, but burning brighter than ever. Her small form shone like a star. The air cracked, the ground shook, her voice filled the night. Strong and sorrowful. You will not take me. You will not erase us, not while I still breathe. The soldiers staggered back as vines erupted from the earth. The wasteland bloomed with impossible life. Trees, flowers, rivers of light. Weapons melted in their hands, swallowed by twisting roots. The warship above groaned, its engine sputtering. The earth itself rebelled against it, pulling it down. The sky lit with fire as the great ship fought to stay aloft. Daniel shielded his eyes, his heart pounding. Lyra was glowing too bright to see. Her small body lifted from his arms, floating. Her eyes shone like suns, her voice echoing in the very air. I am Lyra of the Alaran, the last of my blood. And I will not vanish quietly, the soldiers screamed. Some fleeing, some swallowed by the living ground. The warship cracked, its massive hull tearing apart as vines pierced its engines. Explosions filled the sky, raining fire on the wasteland. But in the center of it all, Lyra stood radiant, her power unstoppable. Her body trembling, breaking, Daniel reached out, tears streaming down his face. Lyra, stop, you'll destroy yourself. Her glowing eyes met his one last time. Her face soft, her voice gentle through the storm. It's too late for me, Daniel, but not for you. Take what I give you. Carry us into tomorrow. Before he could speak, she pressed her hand to his chest. A searing light flooded into him. Images flashed in his mind, cities of light. Gardens and deserts, rivers flowing on dead worlds. He felt the heartbeat of an entire people. Their laughter, their sorrow, their dreams. The gift itself burned inside him, not as power, but as memory. Her people's legacy sealed within his soul. Then her glow flared brighter. Too bright to look at. The world exploded in white. Silence swallowed everything. And when Daniel opened his eyes again, he was alone. The wasteland was empty. The soldiers were gone. The warship reduced to burning wreckage on the horizon. The vines and flowers withered back into dust. Only ashes remained where Lyra had stood. His arms were empty. His chest ached where her hand had touched. Daniel fell to his knees, the silence heavy. Tears slid down his face. She's gone, he whispered. The words tore at his heart, but inside he still felt her. A faint warmth in his chest. A voice soft in his mind. Tell them we lived. Tell them we were not monsters. Weeks later, Daniel returned to human space. The colony officials asked about his mission, about the destroyed rover, about the scars on his body. He gave reports, he gave maps, but he kept one secret locked inside. The story of Lyra, the last child of the Alaran, the girl who had cried out in the dark and changed his life forever. Alone in his quarters, he often stared at the stars. Sometimes, he swore he still heard her voice. Sometimes, he felt her hand still pressed against his heart, and he knew the choice was his, to stay silent and safe, or to share her truth with the galaxy. He clenched his fists, his eyes burning with new resolve. He would not let her vanish. He would not let the authorities' lies erase her forever.